This is the Tech Team 9-piece hook and pick set. Some of the pieces, like the scraper and the awl, have fairly obvious uses. The scraper, of course, you can use for scraping paint or scraping down gaskets on an engine or something like that. And of course, the awl is absolutely perfect for punching holes in cardboard or something like that, and or as a drift pin for centering holes before you put a screw or bolt through them. Two of the more interesting tools are the hook and the 90-degree angle, which may not appear to have a lot of good use, but in fact are extremely useful for people doing automotive work. Later on in this video, I'm going to show you how these two tools are extremely useful in removing heater and radiator type hoses. What you're going to see later on is how we remove this little transfer hose that connects to the bottom of the water pump on a big New Holland tractor. And this hose is really frozen on and difficult to get at. So after you remove the clamps, to remove this hose easily and safely, the first step is to take the hook pin, the 90-degree, and put it in between the hose and the fitting, and then work it around. Now, we've done this in the rest of the video with the tractor, but it may be difficult to see because of the tight quarters. And then do the same thing on the bottom, and you'd be surprised how easily the hose will just twist off in your hands and then remove. Now, this particular hose happened to be a little bit tight, so this tool with the hook on it came in really handy because we were able to get this in between the fitting and the hose and just pull the hose down and right out of the way and off the fitting. Now that you know some of the utility for these particular picks, you do not have to go to the rest of the video if taking tractors apart bores you. I think we'd all agree that there's nothing worse than needing your tractor, getting ready to do some serious work, and then finding out that you have a problem like this and have to wait for a part. What we have here is a New Holland TM190 that's developed a pinhole in the bypass hose that attaches to the bottom of the water pump. It's a real bear to get to, but doing the job is workable if you pay attention and you have the right tools. One thing that I strongly recommend is to do a couple photos of exactly how the hose threads and do them from both sides. This way, when you put your machine back together, threading the hose and getting it to run properly will not be a mystery. My original assessment of this job was that getting to this hose was going to be a real problem, and that I have to remove both the fan and the fan shroud to gain access. Then I went around to the passenger side and took a closer look and realized that all I had to do was remove the belt tensioner and then move the belt out of the way, and I had somewhat less difficult access to the problem hose. Today I'm going to show you how to access that bypass hose and make a relatively quick and efficient repair as long as you get your hands on a replacement hose. In order to remove the belt so you can get the tensioner off and gain access to the hose, you need something with a 1/2-inch drive. In this case we're using a ratchet, but you could also use a breaker bar. Put the drive of the ratchet into the square socket that's immediately above the pulley on the tensioner, and then just simply raise it to relieve tension, and then you can slide the belt off the pulley. Once you've relieved the tension on the belt, it's simply a matter of using a 17mm wrench or socket to remove the one bolt that holds the tensioner in place. Getting to this hose was a little bit of a challenge, and originally I thought the fan and shroud would have to come off, but then I realized that I go around to the passenger side and remove the belt tensioner. And once I got that out, moved the belt out of the way a little bit, I had a clear and easy path, well, somewhat easy, to get in there and begin the process of removing the belt. Okay, we've removed the belt tensioner, and that's now given us enough room to get in there and work on that hose. And we've loosened up both the upper clamp and the lower clamp, and you can see that right in that's that little red thing. That's the hose that we have to get off, because apparently it sprung a leak and we're losing coolant. Now there are right ways and wrong ways to remove a hose. For example, the wrong way to remove this radiator hose would be to loosen the clamps and then put a pair of channel lock pliers on it and try to twist this thing off. You might be able to get away with that right here where it mounts onto the steel or iron casting that goes onto the engine. You would not be able to get away with that right up here where it mounts to the radiator. The reason is that on the radiator there's a thin tube that the hose goes over, and if you put too much pressure on that, what you're going to do is collapse the tube, or worse yet, pull it out of the radiator. Then you're going to be in a whole world of hurt. As we mentioned, we've already loosened up the clamps. We put our hand in there and tried to twist that hose off, but it's not going to come off with just hand pressure. So we've gone to a Tech Team pick set, and we've taken the this particular shape pick, and what we're going to do with this is we're going to force it in there between the hose and the fitting and work it around to break the bond between the inside of the hose and the fitting. And we're going to do that on both ends of the hose, and this is going to free up the hose so we're able to actually remove it by hand. It may be a little bit difficult to see what we're doing here, but we've got the hook end worked in between the hose and the tube it's mounted over, and we just keep working it around until we free up the hose. Now that we've got that hose loosened up a little bit with a 90-degree hook, what we're going to do is take the other pick with this particular shape on it, and we're going to work that down inside the hose a little bit and pull it down and off the fitting. New clamps cost about $1 a piece, and if the two you just removed look like mine, it's probably a good idea to replace them with 2 new clamps. The last thing you want is for all your hard work to go right down the drain because of 1 or 2 failed clamps. Okay, I got this guy out, cleaned him up, and I thought I could just pop a piece of 3/4 inch hose in there, but that's not the case. This is a special New Holland part, and I had to go down to the dealership and order one. It's going to take 2 or 3 days to get in. If you look just above my thumbnail, you'll be able to see where this hose failed. It only takes a little leak like this over a period of time to drain your system and begin to cause high temperature problems. When you've finished replacing the hose, you need to replace the belt tensioner. That has 1 stud on the back that fits into a hole in the casting, and then 1 bolt that requires a 17mm wrench or socket, and just simply matter to put it in place and tighten it up. Okay, now we've finished installing the new hose. We're ready to put the coolant in. Pay attention to the coolant manufacturer's instructions so you get the correct mix of water to coolant for the temperature characteristics of the area where you live. Now we're ready to replace the coolant that we lost, and we're going to do it through the recovery tank up here on top. Now, one of the things you really got to pay attention to is the temperature of your engine when you put the coolant in. This particular tractor has been sitting here for a few days without running, so we can put just about any temperature of coolant water mix into this and not experience any problems. However, if the engine is hot, then you have to do things differently, or better yet, wait until the engine cools down to ambient. The reason is that the cooler liquid going into the hot engine will cause the parts of the engine it contacts to contract slightly, and this can result in serious damage to head, block, and or head gaskets. The best practice is to wait until the engine has cooled down completely before introducing coolant.